Amir. Good to talk to you again. Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
About the same, about the same. I saw you have a new article out in Cybersecurity magazine,
Yeah, United States Cybersecurity Magazine. It's the winter 23 edition.
and it's about employee targeted digital risk, right?
Yeah, the article I wrote is called The New Attack Surface Employee Targeted Digital Risks, which is this kind of new area of threat that obviously I've been really interested. We've both been really interested in for a long time now, but it's finally coming to the forefront of the IT and cybersecurity media as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely talk to people all the time who are seeing their employees targeted as individuals separately from company systems. Why don't you talk a little bit more about how we think about this area of ETDR?
Yeah, so employee targeted digital risks are defined as, or we define them as, the attack surface exposed via an organization's employees' personal devices, digital lives, online accounts, and actually things that may not even have anything to do with what they did, such as like data being sold on the dark web, data breaches of personal accounts, personal information that's being sold by data brokers, all of that sort of stuff of all the team members, and using that, and attackers using that information to compromise the organization. So one way we describe it as it's where the enterprise threat model intersects with the individual personal threat model. In 2022, there was at least three major attacks that were, famously talked about in the media that all started through employees' digital lives and those were used to compromise the organization.
Yeah. One of the things we talk about a lot is just this idea that a lot of attacks are increasingly opportunistic. Whatever data is out there, you'll then plan an attack based on it. And I think this is really an extension of that. This is going one step further and saying it's not only going to be opportunistic which individuals bad actors target, but even within that, if you get access to compromise an individual, you may then opportunistically or deliberately, and in some cases there's a lot of planning, be able to go after their employer and extend it beyond the personal life of that person. Before we go on, I want to ask you a few questions about the threat model you're talking about, but what were the three attacks that happened last year? Or at least the three big ones, at least.
There was one at Microsoft, one at Cisco, and one at Uber. Were
Got
the
it.
three big ones. Yeah.
And I think you have links to those in your article. So let's talk a little bit more about the threat model here from a personal perspective, and when you talk to employers about security.
Yeah. So the first step is to understand like why this is happening. Why are they using individuals to target the company? And there's kind of like three really big reasons. The first is that really enterprise security has come a long way, and there are processes and teams of people and cyber insurance, attorneys, educational programs, lots of stuff now in place, and really mature frameworks that have been adopted for dealing with security within the organization's footprint, like stuff that wasn't there several years ago, which makes it really harder for companies to attack them. The second thing is that like a lot of the core infrastructure, like servers and applications, are either hosted at companies like Microsoft and AWS and Google, where somebody else is doing at least some of the security work for you, all the way over to the majority of applications that people use are SaaS now. So there's a whole other company on top of them that is responsible for the data security of everything inside the application. And the only thing that you have to worry about as an organization utilizing an application is access to that application. So whether that's the mobile app that's on the person's device or people accessing it from the internet and all that. And that's where you saw kind of like this huge growth in like identity management and zero trust and all of that sort of stuff. And finally, the third reason is that individuals just don't have real security. They at best have passive countermeasures, but they
Right.
are not thinking about all these different threats. They're not thinking about what to do when something happens. They're not taking these mitigating steps to, let's say, reduce their risk profile, like getting removed from um, data brokers or managing their mobile devices, any of that sort of stuff. And so these kind of things create this perfect storm of companies getting attacked. And I mean, you have a lot of experience with this. Like, what is it that IT leaders are thinking about? Because I think it's like we haven't reached the point where people come out and say like we need to protect our employees, which is what actually has to happen to solve this
Yeah.
problem. But there are a lot of kind of like intermediate steps that companies are like, well, we really need to do this, which is really now going into the world of employee targeted digital risk. What are some of the ones that you see when you talk to people?
The things I see the people are doing.
Well, the things they're worried about.
Yeah. Well, the area I hear most is going to be social engineering and or phishing attacks that come to employees in their personal lives, right? A lot of the
Yeah.
organizations now are really well protected when it comes to things like a mix of phishing training and then software to prevent emails, et cetera, on the corporate systems. And a lot of that works pretty well. So what we're seeing is bad actors are switching to texting people on personal phones or sending emails to people's personal Gmail accounts, right? Which is coming to unprotected email servers on unprotected personal devices, and there's nothing then preventing you from clicking that malicious link from following through on that. The other place we see it is around organizations that either allow BYOD deliberately or allow BYOD sort of by accident, right? We prohibit it, but some people check their email on their personal devices, or some people wind up using it for their two-factor authentication. I was talking literally this morning to someone who works at a city government agency, forgot her work phone. And so IT set up the 2FA app on her personal phone to get her back into her own email. This is an organization that, of course, prohibits BYOD, but now there's a 2FA app running on a personal cell phone somewhere, right? So there are a lot of cases like this, and I think organizations are worried about how to address that in a world where you clearly can't prevent all of this.
I think it's like 100% right, but it's like hilarious to me because there's all these. That's not even the worst of it. The worst of it is there's so many organizations that have this like limbo status of BYOD where it's like we don't have a policy or we don't allow it, which means we don't have a policy, so that means you can't do it. And then you talk to them and you're like,
Yeah,
well, 2FA for your whole organization is happening on mobile phones, on personal mobile phones. Like
right.
then what's your whole organization is dependent on them. And actually, the more 2FA has become adopted, the more this has pushed it into people's personal lives.
Yeah.
Because like 2FA is pretty much by default happening somewhere other than company hardware and company devices and all of that. So it's like whether you're using SMS or like an app or whatever, it's usually happening on a personal phone. And honestly, putting those inside an envelope of a containerized work setup on a MDM or whatever, like that is not stopping anything. Like at best, it lets you like wipe that stuff off the device when
Right.
someone's gone. That doesn't actually prevent someone to pick up the phone and use it or compromise the person to get access to it. So
One of the things I wanted to ask you, I think it connects to this. You talk a little bit in the article about how personal and professional lives are blending together. What would you say has changed over the last few years that makes you say that? And what does it mean for organizations?
yeah, I mean, I think the trend of like using your personal smartphone for work has been growing for a really long time now. I think the pandemic accelerated remote working. So, people are using home networks, people are using personal computers. More applications than ever have like a mobile component now, where it's like you
Yeah.
can you can also download, this and get it on the go or whatnot. So I think that's kind of the big thing that's accelerated it. But pretty much like every single person I know to some degree interacts with their work and the organizations they work with through their personal device and their personal lives. It can be as simple as using a personal email to have a payroll account at their employer. It all starts in the personal life.
And I think most of us have had the experience of, getting an email from a coworker or a boss that's from their personal email address for whatever reason, legitimate real email from a real coworker. But, then there's that connection. And if that email address is ever compromised in the future, how am I to know that at that time it's not from that person? Before I let you go, I'm curious, Amir, what are some things for people who may not have talked to you or us yet? What are some things you recommend companies do to start addressing this threat surface?
I mean, this is what we do at agency. Companies have to provide security in people's personal lives. The the individuals have to own it. It can't be part of the company's systems. It can't be something that breaches the privacy of people, so they don't adhere to using it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, companies have to invest in good, real cybersecurity for their employees' personal lives. So, check out my article. It's uscybersecurity.net is their website. Thanks.
Cool. Will do. Thanks, Amir.